Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. So, just on June 10th, which was yesterday, this new documentary on the Gilgo Beach case entitled The Gilgo Beach Killer, House of Secrets, premiered on Peacock, and it's a three-part series, apparently approximately 3 hours long. But the interesting thing about this is that Asa Ellerup, who you see in this thumbnail, Rex Heuermann's wife with the red hair there, she talks as if she still believes that her husband Rex is not guilty, that this is a big surprise to her. And let's not forget that she's paid, I believe, over $1 million to take part in this documentary. Sitting in this thumbnail with her is her daughter, Victoria Ellerup, who during this documentary apparently indicates that she thinks that her father is guilty of these crimes. So we have followed this case right from not the beginning of going back to 1993 when a body was discovered of Sandra Castilla, the woman on the right of this thumbnail. That's the earliest murder that's tied to Rex Heuermann, based on a hair that was found on her body, tied to Rex Heuermann. So there is so much evidence in this case, but yet people are so interested. You say the word serial killer, and it gets people's attention. And this case, of course, has so many twists and turns and some incompetence by the Suffolk County Police, some years where nothing was done, years where the FBI was not included in this investigation. So a lot of things to look at. However, it would seem improbable, if not totally unbelievable, that Asa Ellerup, the wife of Rex Heuermann, believes he's innocent in this case. And she knows what time it is. She has to. I mean, is there apparently some mental illness here with the wife? I think she's mentally ill. I do. I mean, she lived with this guy. She lived with this crazy guy. And she lived with she lived and she still lives inside that disgusting house where unthinkable crimes were committed. So we're going to discuss this today. I have yet to see the documentary. I intend to watch it, but I'd rather report to you without having seen the documentary because it seems, I don't want to be pulling ideas from the documentary, but it seems rather crazy that Asa Ellerup can believe that her husband Rex had nothing to do with the murders of these 7 women on the screen: Melissa Bartolome, Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and Jessica Taylor, Valerie Mack. And Shannon Gilbert has not been tied to Rex Heuermann, although her attorney believes she should be included in this. But at this point, she is not. So, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your service dog, hold on to your cup of coffee. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, we're deep into the NBA and NHL finals, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on Major League Baseball, UFC and boxing to tennis and NFL futures. BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. So, folks, we know, I believe most of the people, or you people that have been listening to Police Off the Cuff, you know the Gilgo Beach case, you know the Rex Heuermann case, and you know that he's implicated right now. He's in fact indicted in the murders of 7 women. And various evidence from DNA to eyeball witness testimony makes Rex Heuermann the only suspect in this case. And people that don't think he did this, they really should read some of the documents, the bail application document. It's very succinct and there's so much information in it. But what we're going to focus on today, of course, is this documentary and the why and the how. And is it possible that Asa Ellerup, his wife, that she believes he's innocent, but yet his daughter living in the same household, Victoria Ellerup, thinks he's guilty? And there's a picture of Asa Ellerup and Rex. And apparently they still talk on the phone to this day. So I'm going to play a little bit of Banfield, who appears with attorney for Shannon Gilbert, John Ray.
To me now, he represents the family of Shannon Gilbert, whose death and disappearance led to the discovery of the other Gilgo Beach murder victims. John, thanks for coming back on the show. What is your reaction first to Asa Ellerup's comments in this documentary that she's fallen in love with him all over again, seeing him in jail, accused with 7 murders?
You have to understand, I think, in looking at this entire series that was put out, that this is a posture. This is a show. And she's being paid a lot of money to put on a show. And she and her daughter are doing very well at that. This is all big. This is fake. And her statements are informed by this fakery. What I mean is this. If you listen throughout the entire 3-part series, one thing becomes very clear. Both of those women, no matter what, are actually setting it up to show that they have no involvement in these killings or in anything connected to these killings. Neither one of them has any involvement, John, if you listen to them. And that's what they're professing. So I don't trust a word you're saying.
It's weird to me. Okay, but what's weird to me is that if you don't want to have any involvement, and yet, Asa Ellerup's hair was found in the tape on some of the victims, so the involvement is there.
We explained that Asa Ellerup and her daughter Victoria, some of their hairs were found on the tape or on the bodies of the victims. Now, that is what we would call transfer evidence. And the fact that they live in that house with a serial killer, their hair is bound to be all over the place. And Rex Heuermann, of course, was careful. However, not careful enough, because their hairs wound up being on some of the bodies that were recovered, and they have been identified through investigative genetic genealogy.
Why wouldn't she just disavow this man? She's divorced him, right? She divorced him like within, I think, months of this arrest. So why would she now profess this undying love and suggest that he's innocent? That makes her look maybe even more culpable, or possibly more culpable. And now she can be compelled to testify because she divorced him and doesn't have spousal immunity.
Well, you still, I think, maintain your spousal immunity during the time that you're married. So I don't think that she loses anything in that regard. But if you think about it, for her to actually pretend that she still loves him and so forth, well, maybe I should take that back and say maybe she does, but she loves him in a very sick context, a very dark context. in which these people were living, in which they were operating. And it's undeniable, as you just pointed out, certain undeniable things. It's undeniable that her daughter's hairs were found on 2 of the bodies, that her hairs were found on 2 of the bodies. And it's undeniable that each of them were living in that house throughout the time that Ray Tierney, the DA himself, had said, he was almost quoting me, that he had hundreds of prostitutes, hundreds, that were going through that house. Now, that's a 1,343 square foot house. It's a bungalow, or in essence. And you mean to tell me a married couple for 27 years doesn't know what's going on downstairs?
Thank you for watching.
So this will be an extremely interesting, if you've been following this case, and John Ray happens to be quite a character himself. We had him on this show and it got a little bit bombastic. He represents Shannon Gilbert, whose body was found in Oak Beach about a year after these bodies were found. So her body and definitely helped with this investigation. And in fact, John Ray has helped with this investigation, just as his involvement with never letting this case die. And that is very, very important, knowing about this case and knowing about how this case was ultimately solved. You know, after years of really what I would consider poor police work, poor organization, poor utilization of resources, the FBI wasn't even involved. And that's a bigger case. Let me play this from a local news station.
Being America's most notorious living serial killer, police say he's the Gilgo Beach murderer who killed at least 7 women and ditched their remains on a beach on Long Island in New York. As he awaits trial, a new documentary is taking a deep look at the crimes, including a new interview with the suspect's wife, who, despite all the evidence against him, believes they arrested the wrong man. Stephen Fabian has details.
She's the ex-wife of the accused Gilgo Beach serial killer. And in a new interview, she calls Rex Heuermann my hero. She claims police have the wrong man. Huerman is accused of killing 7 women over 3 decades. Their mutilated remains were found near a stretch of Long Island called Gilgo Beach. Soon after Huerman's arrest in 2023, his wife, Asa, divorced him. But in a documentary out tomorrow on Peacock, Asa says she fell in love with Huerman all over again when she saw him behind bars. Prosecutors say there's a mountain of evidence against Huerman, including DNA that links him to the murders. But Asa says she is still standing by her man.
She doesn't want to believe he's capable of this. And I don't know whether she'll ever come to the conclusion that he did it, but she does not want to believe that her husband, the father of her children, was capable of this.
The question everyone keeps asking is, how could you not know?
The documentary is facing criticism because Asa and her 2 children are reportedly being paid $1 million to participate.
You know, 1/3 of our TV shows are true crime stories that are on today. So there's a public interest in this, and there's a value to it, and I'm not going to make excuses for her being paid. Her time, a lot of her time was spent on this, and a lot of hard work.
Just last week, we reported on a 21-year-old woman's creepy encounter with Rex Heuermann on the Long Island Railroad, just 12 days before he was arrested. Kaylin Morales says she was the only passenger in the entire car when he took a seat next to her.
Initially, it was just me and him in the car, and I just thought that, you know, he could have sat anywhere else. He didn't have to sit directly next to me, and it just made me feel uneasy.
In the documentary, the ex-wife has questions of her own.
Does everybody really believe everything they hear?
Accused serial killer Rex Heuermann has pleaded not guilty, and his wife denies knowing anything about his alleged crimes.
So that's a little bit crazy. Could you imagine? Here she was living with a serial killer for 27 years, and she had no idea he was a serial killer, you know. And according to Ray Tierney, the Suffolk County District Attorney, he brought hundreds of prostitutes into their home Did he bring them into their home when Asa and Victoria were away? Because apparently they traveled every year. Or was he bringing them in even when they were around? Look, these cases go back to 1993. So the murders took place between 1993 and 2010. And we look at these: Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Jessica Taylor, and Valerie Mack. And Shannon Gilbert has not yet been connected with that. And also in this picture here, you see Sandra Castilla on the right side. And that's the case that goes back to 1993. And I believe it was out near Southampton, New York. So very bizarre, right? But the physical evidence and the circumstantial evidence, and one of the things that the commonality of all of these cases is that the victims were all sex workers. And that connects these cases together. Amberlin Castello, Melissa Barthelemy, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, their bodies found on Gilgo Beach. So Rex Heuermann was very familiar with that area, and he chose that area as his dumping grounds. But yet it seems clear that he brought many of these women to his home, perhaps to his basement, which we believe, and many believe in this case, was his little torture chamber. And in his bail application document, he goes over some of the details of his methodology in these killings, which is absolutely horrific.
Breaking their silence in a new documentary nearly 2 years after News 12 broke the news about an arrest in the Gilgo Beach murders. In the documentary, Huerman's daughter says she believes her dad is most likely the killer. News 12's crime reporter Krista McNally has the story.
She now believes that her father may be the Gilgo Beach killer.
Victoria Huerman feels her father may have committed the crimes he's accused of. Huerman making the bombshell revelation in a new Peacock documentary.
Victoria has her feelings and her emotions have evolved.
Huerman's family was paid to participate in the Gilgo Beach Killer House of Secrets documentary, which gives an inside look into their family life and home where investigators believe the murders could have occurred.
Say if they really did happen down here, he really must have been like Superman for us not to have noticed anything ever.
Rex's ex-wife, Asa Ellerup, opening up about their relationship.
Am I still seeing you? I'm sorry.
Yes, you are.
Ellerup has visited Rex in Riverhead Jail, and we now know the mysterious other visitor was his friend, David Jimenez.
It's like, did you do it? And then
Jimenez revealed that he asked Rex if he killed these women, and all the accused murderer did was shed a tear.
I think you did it.
Huerman is accused of murdering 7 women and dumping their bodies across Long Island. His ex-wife still doesn't believe he was capable of committing these crimes.
She's not able to process that.
In the documentary, Ellerup even refers to her now ex-husband as her hero.
No freaking way is this man going out soliciting sex from a sex worker, killing them, and dumping them on Gilgo Beach.
Krista.
So, that's sort of tough to believe that Asa Ellerup, his wife, doesn't believe it. But what we know here is that there's so much physical evidence that ties Rex Heuermann to this case. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was last seen on July 9th, 2007 in New York City. At that time, she was believed to be working as a sex worker. This is right from the arrest affidavit. On July 6, 2007, Miss Brainerd Barnes' cell phone was contacted by a burner phone. Between July 6, 2007 and July 9, 2007, there were 16 interactions between this burner phone and Brainerd Barnes' cell phone. On July 9, 2007, the last cell site location for the Brainerd Barnes cell phone was approximately at 11:56 p.m. in Midtown Manhattan near the 59th Street Bridge. Thereafter, the Brainerd Barnes cell phone had no further activity until July 12, 2007. On July 12, 2007, 3 days after her disappearance, 2 outbound calls from Brainerd Bond's cell phone, checking her voicemail from a cell site location near the Long Island Expressway in Islandia. So all of these burner phones turned out to belong to none other than Rex Heuermann. So solid evidence. And then we all have, the disappearance of Amberlin Castello. She was seen on September 2nd, 2010, leaving her residence at 1112 American Avenue, West Babylon, during the late evening hours. That time she was believed to be working as a sex worker, which is the commonality here. And the burner phone had communications with Castello's phone at approximately 11:33 p.m. and 11:34 p.m. During those communications, the burner cell phone connected to cell site towers in West Amityville and Massapequa Park. Thereafter, the burner cell phone traveled to West Babylon in proximity to the residence of Amber Castello and had contact with the Castello phone at approximately 12:05 a.m. on September 2nd, 2010. So, based upon interviews, a witness saw Rex Heuermann, and he described a large white male, approximately 6'4" to 6'6" in height, in his mid-40s with dark bushy hair and big oval 1970s type glasses. A witness described him to police as appearing like an ogre. I love that word. And of course, the big piece of evidence that really nailed him was a witness noticed a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche parked in the driveway of the residence. According to the witness, following the ruse, the client said he was just her friend. Tell her I'll give her a call, and walked out the front door. Thereafter, at approximately 1:18 a.m. on September 2nd, after the ruse had been perpetrated, the burner cell phone sent a text message to the Castello phone, which stated, "That was not so nice. So do I get credit for the next time?" Phone records show that the burner phone was located in Massapequa Park within 2 minutes of this text message being sent. So that Chevrolet Avalanche was a car that police had in their reports, had in their complaint follow-up reports for years. But 2 months after they established the Gilgo Beach Task Force, an investigator for the state police, a female investigator, identified the car. And that was the first time they had the name Rex Heuermann. So that was the first time they knew this name, and they had the car that was in these reports for so many years, but no one was able to identify it. So in this documentary, they will go over some of these things, but what really makes this documentary unique, and of course, as I said earlier in the show, it premiered yesterday on Peacock, and you can watch the 3-part series on Peacock. Of course, it's going to cost you money. It's pay-per-view. But real life is sometimes much stranger than fiction.
Accused serial killer Rex Heuermann sits in jail charged with murdering 7 women.
The question everyone keeps asking is, how could you not know?
His former wife and daughter are speaking out for the first time in a new crime documentary debuting tomorrow on Peacock, part of NBC Universal.
I was 10, 12, and 13 years old when these girls were murdered.
The Gilgo Beach murders on Long Island, New York were considered a cold case for more than a decade, until 2023, when Huerman was arrested in Midtown Manhattan. The architect linked to the crimes partly through DNA he left on a pizza crust, according to prosecutors.
How you doing?
That DNA on the pizza crust, Rex Heuermann threw it out in a garbage pail in New York City. When he left the scene, investigators from the Gilgo Beach Task Force retrieved that pizza box, and from the discarded pizza crust were able to acquire Rex Heuermann's DNA. And that's called acquiring the DNA surreptitiously, because when someone throws something out, They no longer have a right to privacy. So the police do not need a search warrant. They retrieved the pizza, and sure enough, it was a match to what they were looking for. So that's part of this story here.
I'm doing great now that I've got you on the phone.
In the documentary, his ex-wife, Asa Ellerup, says Huerman is her hero, and she is convinced police have the wrong guy.
The night of the raid, they drove us over to the hotel and they got us a room.
The reason she filed for divorce in the days after his arrest, she says, was to protect the family's assets. But his daughter sounds less convinced of his innocence.
I feel like I can't know whether or not he did or didn't because I was not around for it. I was too young to understand.
Noting that she spent stretches of time not seeing her father.
Like I said, at the same time, there was a lot of hours out of the day that I also was not home, including vacations that he did not join us on.
Huerman pleaded not guilty to all 7 murders. There is still no date set for his trial. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
So again, this case is extremely interesting. But believe it, they have a ton of evidence against Rex Heuermann. They have a ton of circumstantial evidence. They have a ton of physical evidence. And of course, what puts this case together is DNA, and amazing how long DNA evidence can be preserved in the way of mitochondrial DNA that they retrieved from hairs that were on the bodies of the victims. And mitochondrial DNA is maternal, from the maternal side of the family. And the hairs belonged to Asa Ellerup and her daughter, Victoria. And thus, when those are identified through investigative genetic genealogy, or perhaps even through surreptitiously retrieving garbage from the Heuermann's household and being able to identify the DNA belonging to Asa Ellerup and Victoria Ellerup. And that type of evidence is so powerful. And when we hear that in this case right here, Sandra Castilla, in the thumbnail on the screen on the right side, was murdered out in Southampton, New York in 1993. That gives us great pause because they had a hair, I believe, from Rex Heuermann on her body. And the other thing is that gives us a time frame of much longer ago than any of the investigators were aware that Rex Heuermann had started killing people. I have no doubt that Rex Heuermann has more bodies on him than the Suffolk County Police or any investigators anywhere are aware of. Perhaps when this case goes to trial, and if and when perhaps Rex Heuermann gets convicted, maybe then and only then will he confess. Don't forget, there is no death penalty in New York. So they have no leverage to use over the head of Rex Heuermann. All they have to bargain with him is potentially privileges while he's serving life without parole in prison. They'll probably, if he gets convicted, he'll probably get a sentence like 300 or 400 years or something crazy. But perhaps if and when that does occur, maybe Rex Heuermann will come clean then and tell the police about other crimes that he's committed. And until then, I would implore you to watch this Peacock documentary entitled The Gilgo Beach Killer, The House of Secrets, because it's amazing to me that his wife, Asa Ellerup, believes he's still innocent. So folks, hold on to your hats, and thank you for so much for tuning in. Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm Bill Cannon. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.